Hi everyone, welcome to a Channelers channel. I'm Tracy and I'm your host, and today's session is our topic of the week, and our topic of the week is loss. So stay tuned for that. Last week's topic was fear, so if you haven't viewed that video, please do. Whitehawk has some great healings and teachings on that. And so today is on loss, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about what loss is. Loss is about, of course, the loss of loved ones, but loss can be the loss of pets. It can be, the loss of a job. It can be a divorce. There can be a breakup between boyfriend and girlfriend. It could be moving on from friendships. It could be, did I say loss of a job? But not only loss of a job, but if you're changing jobs, right? Any time when you're changing, which would include changing schools, and whether that's because you're moving away, which is also a loss if you're moving from one city to another, or even from one part of a city to another. There's a loss that's involved because there's friends you're moving away from. There's schools you're moving away from. You know, if you change your job, you're leaving all those people behind that you did work with, and you're moving forward to another place. So even though there's new beginnings and there's that bright part, there's also that loss that you feel. So I've said loss of pets, loss of loved ones, moving, changing schools, changing jobs. I'm looking at my book here. Divorce, breakups, moving on from a friendship. Maybe it's just time to move on. You know, you're no longer in sync. Or like, one person is single and the other person's married and having kids, so you're on different levels. So you go away from each other for a while, you know, until you can maybe sync back up, or maybe you never do. So those losses kind of happen. So it's more than just loss of a loved one. So I wanted to just put my little bit of experience in there and what I've learned about loss, and so that's what I have to say. But now we'll go see Whitehawk, and let's see what Whitehawk has to say about loss. And he says, indeed, loss. It can be a very sad time, can it not? Or he'll also say, n'est-ce pas? Can it not? And we're like, yeah. And right away I just feel the whole energy. The whole feeling is just, I feel the sadness of loss, of vacancy, of void. And he's like, yes. When we lose someone or something or change jobs, he says, as you have said, we feel it. We feel it in our body, he says. We feel it in our heart. We feel it in our mind. Like, I'm even feeling it here in my face, like I'm feeling a sinus thing right now. He goes, yes, it permeates us, you know. He goes, it's a melancholy, he says. It's a deep grief, he says, when we lose someone or something that's very important to us. He says, changing houses, he says, can be extremely hard for people because they have so much involved in that house. There's so many memories, he says, in a home, in a place of security and sanctity. He says that when they leave that security and sanctity, they are left at a loss, with a loss. He says, so you see, my friends, she is very right when she speaks of loss coming in many faces and fashions, he says. And we're riding on our horses as he speaks. But what I want to say to you more than anything is that although we have lost a loved one, we've lost a job, we've lost an opportunity even, he says, there's always more joy and fulfillment, he says, to come around the corner, he says. You will see. But he says one must trust. One must have faith that the joy will return in your life. And we're all just sort of sitting in our pain, in our grief, as he says this. And he's like, get up, move around. He says, there is no doubt sometimes there is a time to grieve in order to relieve, he says. Grieve to relieve. But he says, there's also a time, he says, where we must get up and move around and be our own best advocate, he says, to get the juices moving, to get the so-called juices flowing again. I know this is hard for some of you to hear, because some, he says, have experienced immense loss. And we're thinking of there were 3 girls who were kidnapped in Cleveland who gratefully who have come back home. But there's a huge feeling of loss there for when they were taken to even when they've been found, for of course they will never be the same. He says, yes, there's a huge loss, he says, with these 3. A huge gap in their heart for all the life, he says, they missed with their family, for all the growing up they missed. He says, but they will move on. You will see them move on. Sure, they have lost, but they must move forward. And they will know that. And you will know that when it is your time to move forward. Do not get stuck. Do not be troubled by loss. Do not get stuck in loss, though. And I see it like them. He's showing me like someone's stuck in mud. They're trying to get their foot out of mud. You know, if you ever got stuck in mud, like they're right up to their knees stuck in the mud, and they're trying to pull that leg out, you know, to move forward, but they can't seem to get that leg up because it has such a suction. What do I want to say? A suction or suction? You know, where it suctions it, you know, and he goes, indeed, he says, but keep working at it, keep working at it. He says, that leg, it will come untrapped, he says, and you will start to move forward. He says, even if it's the tiniest and tiniest of steps. And then I hear someone like here with us in the crowd saying, well, how do we know when it's a time to grieve and relieve, but it's a time, or it's a time to move forward? So what they're asking is, how do we know when it's time to cry and let that go and do nothing for a while, and how do we know, well, maybe it's time to get up and start moving? He goes, this is a very, very good question, he says, and one I'm very happy you asked. And he says, you don't. You just need to know that if it's been a long period of time that you've been down, he says, down and out, 2 months more, he says, after a major loss, if you've been down and out for more than 2 months and are finding it difficult to get up and to get out, and he says, then maybe it's time to ask for some help. It's like, put your hand up and ask for some help. He says, there's no doubt for some it might be a little bit more, he says, but if we're getting into an extended period of time, he says, where we're unable to move forward in life, he says, then it's time to give a shout out for some help, he says. That's all I'm saying, my children. Do not be afraid of loss. Loss is a very normal part of life, he says. We come and we go. Things come and go. That is a normal process of life, he says. But how we handle it, he says, how we handle it is really all part of it, he says. We must be able to move forward from loss. Again, just like fear, he says, we must not allow loss to paralyze us, to get us stuck so that we cannot move forward. that is all, my children. There is no big story to these. They're simple, he says. There is a give and there is a take, he says. It's not some big mystical, magical teaching that I'm coming in to teach you. He says, I am simply telling you about energy and how it works and where boundaries are, he says. And that if we do get stuck, maybe we need to ask for help. And maybe, yes, being stuck is good for a little bit of time, but being stuck for too long a period of time is troublesome, my friends. God bless, my friends. Do not feel trapped, he says, in your loss. Get up and move it out, he says. Move it on out. And then I hear the song from my previous reading. Come on, everybody, get happy. So that was in our weekly reading from May 13th to 19th. Indeed, he says. God bless, my children. Do not be troubled by loss. Thank you, Whitehawk. So there you go. That is our reading on loss. I hope you find something interesting in there that might help you if you've been feeling a little trapped and you've been grieving too long, or maybe you're just the opposite. Maybe you've been getting up and moving too much and you actually need to take time and sit down and grieve it to relieve it. There's our new quote, grieve it to relieve it. Look for that maybe on Twitter, which brings me to that. Join me on Twitter for little quotes like that I throw out and other little nuances that I put up there too. And I am on Twitter at Tracy and I thought I'd give you a visual. Where did I stick that visual? There you go. Tracy. And this is kind of cool because for you it's going to say Tracy, but when I'm looking at my reflection, it's turned. It's instead of left to right, it's right to left. And that's kind of how it can work too in the spirit world. When we're seeing the spirit world, so we may see them, we'll say we see them lifting their left hand, but it's really their right hand. So if you ever want to see how that reflection works in regards to the spirit world, just look on a video, because on the video I'm looking at myself and I'm on the right, but when I watch the video back, as I'm taping this video, if I look on the video, I'm on the right. But when I view this video back, I'm going to be on the left. And that's how we see in the spirit world. So if I'm seeing a left hand, it might actually be a right hand. And that's how sometimes people say, well, she was wrong. She said it was his left hand. But that's because it's a mirror image. You get that mirror image thing happening. So there you go, another little tidbit of information you probably didn't expect in a lost video. And I'll try to remember to do that one on reflection again, or maybe I'll come up with something else. But anyways, visit me on Twitter at Tracy. Like, share, comment. Subscribe, that's it. And my next video will probably be on spirit guides. Unless you have a better idea, leave it in the comment section. But for now, it's spirit guides. God bless everyone. I'm Tracy for a Channelers Channel.